a top 10 defense and another defensive coordinator poached somewhere else, right? What's new in Minnesota? PJ Fleck entering his 9th year over here in Gopher Town. And look, there's reason to be optimistic about the future of this program, right? I mean, you're recruiting at a level that, you haven't really seen very often from this school. And you got some really nice talented pieces. You got some young players that have shown flashes in camp. You got some interesting, you got a new defensive coordinator that you're pretty confident in, being promoted. What is this going to look like, though, for this Gopher team that's playing a schedule where you're going to be in a lot of tight ball games, all right, this year? You're going to be playing against a team. There's only 2 games this year that you look on the schedule. Actually, 1 game, because Buffalo is pretty good. There's 1 game on the schedule where you're like, okay, they're definitely winning that game, and that's against Northwestern State. And every other game, you're like, there is a scenario in which Minnesota could lose this game, but for about 10 of these games, you just look at it and you're like, man, if Drake Lindsay, this, if Darius Taylor that, if this offensive line this, they could win, a lot of those games, which we'll see. I mean, the over and win totals, you can pick it at 6.5 at huge juice or 7.5 juice to the under. We'll pick it here at 7 for the show today, but 7, that's a lot of wins. Although we know that PJ Fleck loves going bowling.
And to win his bowl games. Yeah, welcome to the middle of the Big Ten. You said it in terms of all these toss-up, one-score games that are going to be happening. We talked about this a lot last year with the Big 12 and with their conference realignment and what the talent level was spread and the parity of the Big 12 and how fun that was going to be. That's going to translate, I think, for probably years to come, but especially this year, the middle of the Big Ten. How are you going to shape out 5 through 12, 5 through 13 is going to be really exciting to see. And you're seeing a lot of their opponents, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Rutgers, good teams like that are right there up and down that list there. And it's going to be important. You're going to have to win and be good situationally. And PJ Fleck loves to harp on that. But the reality is you are young in certain key spots, quarterback, left tackle, or right, potentially linebacker. I think you're a little bit more inexperienced than you've been. And then obviously at cornerback, I think you're pretty definitely inexperienced. You lost 2 of the better cornerbacks we've seen wear Minnesota Gopher uniforms in a while. That duo was awesome. Justin Wally and Ethan Robinson. You also get Danny Collins coming in. You lose not only that, but you lose the defensive line coach who's heading off to the NFL, who was a great recruiter for you. And I thought he was a pretty good developer. He was obviously a rising star, super young guy that just going to be doing great things in the NFL there. But I think just getting into it, let's talk about Drake Lindsay. Like 6'5", 230, beautiful arm. I mean, you go to these practices, right? Which I've been, and even as a true freshman, he was there and he just threw it differently. You have legit, and I'll say it right now, August 20th, you have what should have been an NFL draft pick, Max Brosmer, and what should have been and will be part of that 53-man roster for the Vikings, Max Brosmer. Like, in Lindsey's arm looked different than a legit NFL quarterback. So that's the excitement. That's the exciting part. The nervousness is you're replacing your left tackle, replacing your 2 best receivers, and
your right tackle,
right
guard.
So you're going to have inconsistencies to begin. That's just the nature of having a redshirt freshman in at quarterback. But you look at these lists of offseason rankings of quarterbacks in the Big Ten. If you looked in January, it was Zach Pyron, who, if you asked any Gopher fan, was never going to win that job. And obviously ended up transferring over to South Alabama. You come to August in these preseason rankings, and here's Drake Lindsay at 18th again, right? Down there, and they just kind of plug and play, which I get. Like, where do you want to put him? You have no idea. Like, yes, it was pretty telling that the staff didn't go out and get anybody else. But you also don't know how.
You thought Logan Fife was a guy. He was committed there briefly, and I thought that was great depth to add there, coming over from Fresno State. But you're settling a little bit here for a backup quarterback, which is hard to do. It's hard to convince someone to play backup quarterback.
Yeah, well, that was the 2 off seasons. That was last off season. If you can believe that.
I guess, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, so it'd be Lindsay's show, and then you're looking at I would argue, like I know Schick, right? Chikazansky, the in-state walk-on kid, everyone's favorite. Minnesota loves their in-state walk-on guys, which I respect and I love that. But if push comes to shove and Lindsey's hurt for an extended period of time, it's going to be Moorhead. I would be very surprised if it's not. He's still learning the offense, but there's a significant downgrade even then, even if you don't know what Drake Lindsey is going to be. But if he can give you tier 3, tier 4 quarterback play in the Big Ten, I feel a lot better about this team going bowling and obviously winning some of those close games situationally. He's going to be fun to watch, though. Watch him develop and grow into this Gopher role as being the face. He loves it in Minneapolis, coming up from Arkansas. Super kind guy. You see him around at in different spots on campus, and he's a really nice guy. He just lights up every room he's in. So excited to watch him.
And how do you help a young quarterback, CD? You turn to your running backs and you just start handing off the football to what is a very good running back room. All right, Darius Taylor, you know him if you follow college football. If you're watching and clicked on this video, you probably know who Darius Taylor is. One of the better running backs in the Big Ten. One of the better running backs in college football when he's healthy, right? That's been a little bit of an issue. He hasn't really played a full season, of football yet. But 200 carries last year, almost 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Also was a wide receiver in high school. You've heard CD talk about that before, which means he's catching passes out of the backfield. AJ Turner coming over from Marshall, who was fantastic for them last year. And Cam Davis, I mean, how do you convince him to join this running back room, and just be a piece? Because when he was healthy for Washington, he was pretty decent, back in the day. So this is a really good running back room to me. And if history has shown us anything, it is very important to be deep in the Minnesota Gopher running back room.
Yeah, it seems like every odd year you're going to have to dig into your 4th and 5th string running backs. As a Gopher fan, you understand the pain in that. But yeah, you talked about the compliments that they brought in. They love what they're getting out of Turner and Cam Davis so far in camp. Obviously, everyone knows Darius Taylor is a star. If you are a Minnesota fan, you've known that since September of his freshman year and what he was doing in the non-con and moving into conference play before he went down to injury. Yeah, this is a really, really good group here. I love the compliment of Darius Taylor, what he can do, and you spell him with AJ Turner, and then short yardage plus. Short yardage plus Cam Davis, meaning like he can give you those short yardage, tough carries, save a little bit of wear and tear off of Taylor and Turner, but he can also do more than that. So when he's in the game, you can't just expect him to be a pass block. You can't just expect him to be running the ball at the middle. He does have some juice into him as well. And then Fami Ejeboy, I think is his name, a guy that the staff is super high on, that at some point, if you do have to dip into your real depth, like if Taylor goes down, he will be a pretty significant role, I think, in this offense. But again, yeah, here we are. Surprise, surprise, Minnesota has a really good running backs room.
And at wide receiver, Elijah Spencer took the jump that he needed to make last year. And then Daniel Jackson. Oh my gosh, we talk about how good he was last year so often on this show. Like, actually, you dive into the film and you were like, this guy does everything so well. Yeah, it's no surprise he was targeted over 100 times last year. All right, and it's no surprise that he played a big role in Max Brosmer's development over the course of the season last year. Even with his departure, I do think that this is a very, I'll use the word sneaky wide receiver room. Okay, sneaky is not always mean good. All right, but I think what people aren't expecting is they don't realize that Javon Tracy, is an all-MAC player, right? It's coming over from Miami of Ohio. They don't realize that Logan Loya, is a legitimate asset coming over from UCLA. They don't realize that Malachi Coleman was a highly rated recruit and has all the talent in the world, and he may not even see the field a ton. Lemeke Brockington, right? That's a guy that you've heard about for several years now. If you're a Gopher fan, like, this is his time to shine. Christian Driver, I don't know what his status is going to be for this season, but Jalen Smith is a guy that you hear about a lot. CD, break it down for us.
Yeah, I think I'll go by this, a little bit of superlatives or maybe some statistical leaders because it's so multiple. I think Gopher fans were spoiled, and also part of it was scheme, and part of it was you had Ethan Kellick-Manis at times who just was a one-read quarterback. And part of it was Daniel Jackson was so good that like he fed a lot of targets his way. So you will see the ball spread out a lot more. You've seen that in practice so far. It sounds like Lindsey's a much more comfortable with firing the ball to any part of the field, obviously, but also to any of these receivers because there hasn't been a ton of separation, in that first group. If you ask me who's going to lead the team in snaps, Le'Meke Brockington, because of his run blocking ability, especially if he's healthy, another year removed from injury, kind of honing in. I think he takes a little bit of step as a receiver, but also what he does and what he can do as a blocker, so valuable in this scheme. If you ask me who's leading the team in touchdowns, I'll go Javon Tracy. He was an all-MAC guy for him last year at Miami, Ohio. Really stinking good. He has sound like he has hit the ground running here in spring and into fall camp, being one of the more go-to guys for Drake Lindsey. A guy that's being slept on, I think, who leads a team in catches is Logan Loya. I think he was so good. You go back to his 2023 tape, and he was such an asset for Ethan Garbers in UCLA. Last year, he struggled as the offense struggled, but I think he's a very, very capable receiver. He's an older veteran guy, will be very handy for a guy like Drake Lindsey to have in his first year starting. And then if you would talk about fan favorite, it will turn into Jalen Smith, what he can do to take the top off of defenses and with the ball in his hands and the excitement of an in-state kid, Mankato West, right? And also too, what he does in his youth and explosiveness, that he moves in a way a little bit differently than Tracy and Loya and even Brockington too post-injury. So that's where I'm kind of seeing the top four shakeout. You mentioned Malachi Coleman, a guy that can play a very niche role. Think about what Dalen Wright did a couple years for Minnesota in terms of drawing pass interferences, running slants and go balls, a little bit limited route tree, but obviously the physical gifts are all there. That defense has to respect him on the field because of his ability to take the top off you, and he's 6'5". And then we'll see how the jumps for year three guys like Kendrick Lanier and Nuke Hayes, Danielle Nuke Hayes, right? And Nuke Hayes, a guy that flashed in the bowl game. Kendrick Lanier has been a guy you've been hearing about. It seems like every offseason now. Can he crack that top four there? But that's how I see that breaking down. It's not a bad group here. I do think we'll see if Drake Lindsey can get on the ball. We'll see if the offensive line, which we'll talk about after the tight ends, can protect them and make sure that happens. But I think with what Matt Simon, Farmington native, is working on, I think this is a pretty solid group.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Tight end, Jameson Gears. I mean, I thought he was pretty good for you last year. I mean, very underrated tight end. If you're looking at, just in the landscape of college football, very underappreciated. Cal Rupp also got some playing time last year. He won't be there anymore. But, I mean, tight ends, fine. We know the Gophers are going to utilize him. And if he's healthy, but beyond Gears, feel decent about this tight end room if something happened to Gears?
I think it'd be definitely a drop off. I think Beimer gives you a nice piece behind him. I think when he was brought in, the misconception was he was going to replace Nick Callerup, Coke Keith kind of role. The reality is he's a little bit more of a receiving threat than the other two guys and less of a blocker. He's got special teams versatility, so there's value in that, obviously. But I think the thought was behind bringing him in to pair with Gears is to spell Gears, right, to keep him fresh all season, but also to run two tight end sets with helping out Drake Lindsey, big body targets under the underneath coverage to give you obviously ways to settle into games. And this was also before you found out you really liked your wide receiver room, maybe more than you had thought, or maybe this is a little insurance in case you didn't want to run 3 and 4 wide receiver sets at a time at Minnesota. And obviously Frank Bierman will do his role as a blocker. I do want to bring up one name, young kid Jacob Simpson. I would love to see him get some action at times, especially in the out of conference early in the season, and see what he can give you come Big Ten. He has a really nice frame. He moves extremely well for his size. He's from Iowa, I think, so how they pump out tight ends just like that. And it sounds like the future is very bright for him. I don't know how much he'll be relied upon, especially if Gears and Bieber stay healthy, but we'll be interested to see if he can bring extra juice that maybe Gears and Bieber don't have quite yet. But yeah, it's a solid group. I don't think it's a superstar laden, but I think it's pretty competent in the Big Ten.
Now, the offensive line group last year, you had some stars there. Ursary, I mean, obviously NFL guy over there for the Texans. Quinn Carroll was solid. Tyler Cooper gone. All three of those guys. See ya. You're going to be asking some transfers. I know Dylan Ray over there from Kentucky is kind of like a sneaky get. All right, but I'll use the word sneaky, not because I think he's going to be an all Big Ten player, but because he'll be okay, right? But can this group stay, one, healthy, right? Two, is this group going to be good enough to compete against some of the defensive lines that you're going to be playing on this schedule? Because you're going to be playing the Iowa defensive line. You know, Nebraska's going to compete there. Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State. Like, you're going to need this offensive line to step up for that run game. But also, let's keep Drake Lindsay alive, right? I don't want to see. I've seen Emmett Morehead play football. I don't need to see him play football anymore. All right, I want to see Drake Lindsay play football. So, what are we expecting here for the offensive line for the Gophers in 2025?
Yeah, wouldn't that be great, right? A healthy quarterback for you. This line I thought was really talented, really on paper, one of the better ones that Brian Callen has put together as offensive line coach for Minnesota, and it kind of underperformed. And that was, kind of due to some of your interior rotation. Right tackle maybe wasn't quite what you wanted it to until later in the season. Philip Daniels kind of took a hold. He heads off to Ohio State. Obviously, Ursary is off to, going away to the NFL, being a star there. At some point, you lose, a couple, Tyler Cooper, Quinn Carroll, some veterans that played a lot for you. You're kind of switching Ashton Beers back to center, moving Greg Johnson back to left guard, which both those guys seem more natural there. That Dylan Ray's an interesting guy you brought up. He seems like a guy the staff brought in more so for his guard tackle flexibility as a reserve, but I think he kind of hit the ground running in spring and this summer, and it sounds like he's put himself in a position to win that right tackle position, and more so due to the fact that Khalid Tafai has battled injuries, and so has Nathan Roy in fall camp, which isn't great news for Minnesota fans. It's great news for Drake Lindsay. So that is some worry there. Marcellus Marshall, I think, will be very solid as your right guard. He also has tackle flexibility, but I think the good news is Ray gave you enough at right tackle to keep Marshall inside, which I think he's better at. So those interior guys, I'm not too worried about. A lot of starts, a lot of age between the three of those guys. It will be the upside of Nathan Roy. How quickly can he translate as a redshirt freshman, former four-star kid, best prospect in the state of Wisconsin just a year ago? How quickly can he translate and be ready for Big Ten blocking? And then what do you get from the right tackle? How big of a liability is it? Is Dylan Ray good enough? Does Khalid Tafai move over to right tackle? Beyond that, though, I like your depth at guard a lot more than I like your depth at tackle. So if you get some injuries there, you might have to kick Marshall out the tackle and slide someone else into guard, and I think that makes the whole line a lot worse. So not only is there question marks, but there's also depth concerns, which is it's troubling, honestly, for Minnesota.
On the other side of the line of scrimmage, I mean, a group that I definitely took a shot on the preseason last year and said that this group is going to be bad. That was not the case last year. They stayed healthy. They dominated. They got to the quarterback. They were an elite team against the run. I mean, they were a top 30 against the run in like just about every single category that you can possibly imagine. You're losing a couple guys in this line, you still really don't have the depth that I was really concerned about last year, or at least, the depth that I would hope to see, on a Big Ten team. But maybe you can disagree with me on that spot. But what does this defensive line need to do? Are they in a good position to have another successful season with new defensive coordinator Danny Collins?
Yeah, it's definitely a group that's been pretty, in focus for Minnesota fans. I think this offseason, wondering about some of your depth at rush end, running about the development of Jackson Howard, who's healthy in the interior. How can we keep Anthony Smith fresh? Because make no mistake, I know Coy Parrish is out there. I think Anthony Smith is the most important player on this Gophers defense because of what he does and because of what's not behind him. Coy Parrish plays in one of the better safety rooms in all of America, right? Anthony Smith is going to be a one-man wrecking crew. And he could do it. He has the tools. He has the physicality. You saw him flash last year, what he can do inside and outside. Keep him fresh. The development and the health of guys on the interior and playing that strong side defensive end 5 technique for you is so pivotal. And having guys like you're bringing in Rashawn Lawrence, you won him in a big recruiting battle in the spring the transfer portal. You bring in Stephen Curtis. Lucas Finnessy is also over there on that side. Is Adam Kissayi ready to play? Probably not. Probably a year early. Same goes for the other side, too. You're probably going to have Jackson Howard and Carter Menz. I know Howard's bulked up a little bit. He seems like he's ready to take on a Big Ten load, especially more in that first and second down package. Do you have other guys in that room that can rush the passer? Like, can Carter Menz take a step forward? One of the best players in the state of Dakota. And then you're just battling injuries inside, right? Like Thierry Randall is hurt. Mo Amonade is hurt. Transfer from Purdue. It's going to be Devin Eastern, who also needs to stay healthy and also needs to stay fresh. Jalen Logan Redding, which returns for it seems like his 7th year of college football. And then you've got like walk-on Nate Becker. And then it's like, is Riley Sunrim ready to play? Maybe a year early. Is Jalen Hicks ready to play? Maybe a year early. That's what's concerning. You've got guys that are probably a year too early being thrown into the Big Ten. That's where you're going to have problems. And that's what worries me in games where you're going to play one-score games. You can't stop the run. You can't get off the field on third down. That's how you're going to lose those games. And I think we'll find out. We'll find out early, I think, about Cal and Rutgers and what they do to this defensive line. And then obviously you will be monitoring the health and the wear and tear. If Anthony Smith is playing 65 snaps, PJ Fleck, listen to me. If Anthony Smith is playing 65 snaps, that is way too many for him to be playing. That's what he said. I kind of went on a little rant there. I'm sorry, but I hope you get the gist. It's a really talented front 3 guys, plus Jackson Howard, former high 4-star recruit. Very good. This was a video game. You could turn off fatigue. You could play those guys, run them in the ground, and they'd still play at a high level. This is one of the better groups in the Big Ten. Behind them, a lot of worry is. You talk about taking overs and unders. That's where the floor could fall out from underneath you. You remember just 2 years ago, your defense fell apart against Purdue and Illinois and other teams like that, right? It just got really bad. So we'll see if that happens again this year. Last year, they got very lucky injury. You talked about them last year in terms of being a question mark. They stayed healthy and they hit. This year, I'm not worried about the guys at the top. I think they're really freaking good. If they stay healthy and fresh, this will be a really productive defense. If they don't, you could run into some problems.
Well, linebacker, what made that defense so good last year as well is Cody Lindenberg. Just staying healthy was so massive. But he's gone now, right? You get Maverick Baranowski back. You bring in Jeff Roberson from Oklahoma State. Devin Williams played intermittently, not at necessarily Cody Lindenberg level, but it seems like you got 3 guys here that you kind of like. It doesn't feel like a ton of depth, right? So, like, what are you anticipating from this linebacker group, and how big of a loss is Cody Lindenberg? Because it feels like that's pretty huge.
He's massive. A massive loss. A healthy Lindenberg was one of the better players on this team and also a better linebacker in the Big Ten. So Maverick Baranowski will step into that role of being the alpha, the linebacker number 1. It'll be interesting to see how Danny Collins and Mariano Sori-Marin, who's the coach now, is going to be kind of lining him up and where they have him at. And he's a really good coach. I know if you've been listening to this podcast for years now, you know my feelings about him as a player. It's a really good coach so far on the recruiting trail as and other things. All reports seem like he's pretty good. But anyways, Baranowski, I'm going to throw a couple names out here, some younger guys, right? Matt Kingsbury and Emmanuel Carmel right now are the talk of the linebacker room, in fall camp. Emmanuel Carmel is a guy, number 1 player in the state of Minnesota. You won him over a bunch of blue blood recruits. He can kind of do it all. I don't see him playing 400, 500 snaps at stand-up linebacker for you, but 150, 250 snaps, if he really starts turning it on, 300 snaps of just hybrid role. Like, go out there, see ball, hit ball. What he can do with his burst, his first step is unlike anything in the front 7 that Minnesota's had, honestly, for a while. since honestly maybe Boyamafe, right? And what he did off the edge a couple years ago. So obviously Carmo, and then Matt Kingsbury, a guy that was thrown into, I brought up Purdue, in the D-line segment. He was the guy that was playing in that game, and he was way too early, thrown in after a bunch of injuries. Sounds like he's having a great camp, and they're also using that rush linebacker too, rush end, excuse me. So he's got some versatility with Carmo. I think it's a solid group. It was one I was very concerned about at the end of last year, graduating Lindenberg and getting Jeff Roberson, who's a fine, solid rotational guy, but just running back Baranowski, Williams, and hoping for development. And you got that development out of those two guys, Kingsbury and Carmo. So that makes me feel a lot better about this group. It won't be an elite group in the Big Ten. It probably won't be an above average group. But if you give me, replacement level play and health, like I think that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, and this secondary last year, all right. How many secondaries do you think there were in college football that were better than this secondary? And by the way, no one talks about how good Minnesota's secondary was last year. I mean, Henderson, Robinson, Justin Wally, right, are all gone. They were all very good. Not to mention Kerry Brown and Coy Parrish in that room, Gooseby, loaded. And Zaquan Bryan, playing intermittently, when Justin Wally obviously battled injuries a couple games. This unit was wildly successful last year. What does it look like this year? You still get those safeties back in Parrish and Brown and Gooseby. At the cornerback spot, I like Zaquan Bryan, but do you see him, CD, as an alpha guy? And then who's the other guy, right? That's the question.
Yeah, I do worry. He unquestionably he will be your cornerback one, right, in week one. I do worry about him being on the lower end, especially he's still a young guy, still learning a position, being on the lower end of Big Ten cornerback ones, right? And that could be of concern. And the other concern too is your cornerback two spot still hasn't been figured out in fall camp. You were hoping to bring in John Nestor, a guy you brought in from the transfer portal from Iowa, speedy guy. It's a good athlete, but kind of got beat out at Iowa too. So it's not like he's this mega prospect pedigree kind of guy, but he's a very solid option. I think he gives you a good floor in that room. The ceiling is with a couple young guys, right? And that comes with Mike Gerald. That comes with Naeem Parrish, kid from New Jersey. Those guys have really, really shined. And I think they can be really, really great Gophers at some point in their career. I do want to just hold temper expectations because they are still so young. And they're also going to be playing opposite another inexperienced corner in Zaquan Bryan. The good news is you're going to trust your six. Like you're going to trust your inside guys or your 9 or 3, whatever it would be on the clock in terms of your safeties are really freaking good. They're athletic. They can make up ground. They can tackle. They're very multiple. They being Danny Collins is going to have a lot of fun using his own position group guys he recruited and developed to kind of bring this whole thing together. Like if you are struggling on the defensive line, if you are struggling with consistency at linebacker, if you are struggling with consistency at cornerback, you're going to use Coy Parrish and Kerry Brown and Gooseby as guys like stitch jobs here and there, just trying to figure it out. They're really freaking good. They are. And then one more name I'll bring up, if you can get them healthy, is Jonte McMillan and Darius Green, guys that will probably play a role in that nickel spot, but maybe early down nickel spot. And you can have, some of your playmakers come in, Coy Parrish, Kerry Brown, kind of be floating around. The other thing we didn't talk about too with the wide receiver core is Coy Parrish is going to be playing wide receiver. To what extent, I think still remains to be seen. I see you shaking your head over there. I think that's a legit commitment from the staff. I don't think it's going to be Travis Hunter level where you're playing 100 snaps a game. I do see him playing a role on the offense and special teams too. So how fresh is he at safety? The only reason you feel good about doing that is because you got Kerry Brown and Gooseby and even guys like Garrison Monroe and Zahir Rayner behind them that you feel pretty good about the depth in that room. This is the best room on this team is that safety room. And then that cornerbacks. We'll see how they shake out. If I told you right now, if you told me, or if I told you this, Matthew, that you get like above average play from cornerback, I mean, you got to be thrilled, right? You got to be absolutely floored.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And the thing with Koi Parrish, though, is like, I'm not sure. I'll shake my head a little bit. I think Koi Parrish is like a super athlete, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are special people that were gifted. Cooper DeJean was one of them, right? Travis Hunter was another one of them. There are certain special types of athletes. I mean, Deion Sanders is like the extreme example of that, right? But there are guys that can do both, right? Miles Jack back in the day.
Good pull.
Good pull. I think Koi Parrish is a guy that can do that. I really do. So I'm not super worried about that. I would worry more about an injury perspective than him getting tired, because I don't think he will. This guy was like a mega basketball player too. Like he's used to he doesn't get winded. All right. But yeah, if you get above average cornerback play, especially from that number 2 spot, because I think you will get it, and Zaquan Bryan, that would be massive. That would be massive. We'll quickly move to special teams here before we get into win totals. You lose Dragan Kesic, who I know some of you fans are thinking about all those missed kicks, right? But you also got to think about all those makes in those clutch spots too. Like he was good. All right. I know last year the North Carolina game comes up, right? But man, I don't know what you're gonna get from Denenberg over there coming from Syracuse. I don't know what you have in Jackson. We'll see. For the kicker room, punter room, I'm just gonna assume it's a little bit of a downgrade. I think that was a surprisingly decent room last year, if I'm not mistaken. And then, thank God, from a return perspective, that Quinn Redding is no longer fielding punts, because Coy Parrish touching the football means that something can actually happen, right? Quinn Redding, his one job was to catch the football, and he only did that sometimes. So that's going to be a big upgrade there from a return perspective. But yeah, for special teams, give us just a quick debriefing on some of these guys.
Yeah, you hit it on the money there. Like Denenberg and Jackson are major question marks. I'm very concerned about that, and that will go into part of my decision making because you're going to be in a lot of one-score games. Those are important pieces. Surprisingly enough, and if you followed Minnesota, if you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with Minnesota football. Punter and returner have been, I mean, sore spots is an understatement, right? Mark Crawford trotting him back there and punting the ball 39 yards, every freaking time was just awful. Was just awful to see. And then, yeah, for how many years did Quentin Redding get way too many snaps? You also have Logan Lawyer out there too. I think he'll be interesting returning punts along with Coy Parrish. Yeah, special guy. At punter, I will add one more name is Tom Weston. Tom Weston's the guy from Australia. I know Mark Crawford or whatever, but he is, from I couldn't even pronounce it. Ouachita Baptist, from Arkansas, private university. He has a cannon and has been wowing media and fans and players in practice with his leg. Not that it's going to be, what we've seen from the Iowa Hawkeyes and what they tried out there with Toy Taylor, but I think it could be a legit weapon. And if you're talking about a team with a defense, that might need all the help it can get at cornerback and at linebacker and at interior defensive line, like that's a big deal, is like gaining field position, especially if you have a quarterback too. You don't want them backed up against your own goal line. So that's just what I'll add to with Tom Weston. But
So from a win total perspective, we're going to pick this at 7. Remember, if you like the over, you can get it at 6.5. If you like the under, you can get it at 7.5. Depends on the place you look. Of course, we tell you all. Shop lines. All right, if you're serious about this, have fun, right? Don't get crazy. Shop lines, right? I lean under. 8-4 means that, like, To me, 8-4 means that like everything went right and you were healthy, right? Which could happen. It happened last year, in terms of the staying healthy and like certain positions working out, but it did take a little bit. Like it took about midway through the season, for Max Brosman to really click it together, for Coy Parrish to be playing full time and kind of developing that star. So if Drake Lindsay is good, the defensive line stays healthy, that linebacking core stays healthy, that second cornerback spot, gets filled at an appropriate level, the offensive line doesn't take a huge regression. Oh yeah, then yeah, you can win 8-9 games, whatever. But like that means all that has to happen. So it's not gonna be a bet for me under 7, but I'll lean it for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the under here, and I might feel confident enough, especially at 7.5, to get that under there. You said 8-4, yeah, like that's a really hard ask when you have Ohio State and Oregon baked in the schedule. Now, for a team like Minnesota, and like when you're going about win totals, like that's actually great. You get those two teams on the road. That means you get Purdue and Nebraska and Michigan State and Wisconsin, teams like that, Rutgers at home, like winnable games. So your home schedule is very doable. If you take care of business at home, you go to Cal and you take care of business there, and then Northwestern, you take care of business. It's a really good spot. You're staring at 9 wins, right? I think it's unrealistic to ask Drake Lindsay in year 1 to go 3-0 against Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, be realistic, Minnesota fans, right? Nebraska gets better. Iowa has a good quarterback. Wisconsin is Wisconsin. Who knows? I know it's been very good recently, but that's the reality. I'm on the under here. I find a hard time. You're going to be in a lot of toss-up games. Situationally, this team scares me with the youth and inexperience and potential lack of depth. Those are all recipes to struggle. You talk about the bottom falling out. Yeah, the bottom could fall. The team could miss a bowl game. That's not out of the question in this new Big Ten format. So, yeah, it sucks. I think you can build off of last year. I look to the year after with a lot of guys on the offensive line, maybe defensive line getting a year older. I think that could help you a lot. But in terms of 2025, I won't be holding my breath, for a Big Ten championship appearance, right? But yeah, I'll be on the under here.